Kaiba is famous for the variety of ways he uses Blue Eyes, and being perhaps the most iconic card of the entire game a la Charizard of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Konami has supported Blue Eyes to the extent that it was able to win the World Championship in 2016. But at this expense is the rest of Kaiba's cards. While he runs a host of powerful monsters and cards that regularly make appearances throughout the series, almost none of them have received their own archetype, and the ones that have leave a lot to be desired. So today, let's go over the top 10 Kaiba cards we'd love to see get their own archetype.
Number 10.
Blade Knight, a card that Kaiba uses a few times in Battle City and again in Waking the Dragons, all the way to using it to battle the Great Leviathan. So Blade Knight's a real one, and he actually had his 15 minutes of fame back in the early days of the game, where its stats as a light warrior level 4 made it work well with chaos cards and reinforcement of the army, and its effect allowed you to negate the effects of pesky flip monsters like the jars, and he also gains 400 attack if you have one or less card in hand, putting him at 2000, which was very formidable in those days, and especially helpful in top deck wars. So given his usage in the anime and in the card game, we think a Blade Knight deck would be pretty deserving. The archetype could involve monsters that gain effects if your resources in a certain place are low, like if you only control one monster or if you control no spells or traps, and its stats also make a good recipient of all the light and warrior support out there.
Number 9.
Battle Loocks, a card that not only served as a big beatstick in the early days for both us real-life players and Kaiba, but a monster that traces its connections all the way to Priest Seto in ancient Egypt. This legacy puts him a notch above Blade Knight on our list. Battle Loocks is a 1700 attack vanilla beast warrior earth monster, so an archetype with him could involve big monsters that run roughshod in the battle phase, and further powered by the effects of different axes.
Number 8.
Judg Man. This card is actually used by Johnson in the Virtual World arc as his deck master, but he actually makes appearances in Kaiba's duels both before and after that arc. Judg Man is a 2200 attack level 6 vanilla, so not the most promising of stats, but being an earth warrior helps. His name lends itself to a potential archetype around Judgment, as shown in the Virtual World arc where his deck master ability is to clear the courtroom, meaning wiping all monsters your opponent controls and inflicting 500 damage for each. So an archetype that gets rid of your opponent's cards by judging them on some sort of criteria sounds like it could really lay down the law.
Number 7.
Crush Card Virus. Obviously this is not a monster card since Kaiba is short on signature monsters, but he does have a few signature spells and traps, with this one being the most iconic. The way Crush Card works is that when a dark monster Kaiba controls is destroyed, it springs the virus and destroys all monsters in his opponent's deck, hand, and field that have over 1500 or more attack. The card was also very notorious in the real-life card game, essentially functioning as a win condition until it was banned and then later errated. But the reason we have this card on our list isn't just as a standalone wiping your opponent's big monsters, but because of the way Kaiba uses this card, particularly against Ishizu, alongside Virus Cannon to decimate her deck completely. Konami has actually expanded in this direction with a slew of virus cards and even some support to create a deck where the viruses are the star as opposed to a tech option. We think building this out further could make for an interesting deck concept, and would love to see a deck that can leverage the viruses more consistently to tear apart the opponent's deck.
Number 6.
Vorce Raider. This card falls into a similar category of Battle Loocks, an axe-wielding big beatstick, but we put him higher on the list since Kaiba seems to favor him more as he uses him pretty regularly from Battle City onward, and because he's got 1900 attack. Unfortunately, unlike Battle Loocks, by the time Vorce Raider was released in 2005, his high attack didn't mean much in the game, so he never got a chance to shine the way that he did in the anime. An archetype around him could go a few different ways, playing to his axe-wielding battle prowess, or leaning on his dark attribute the way Kaiba does for crush card plays.
Number 5.
Chaos Emperor Dragon Envoy of the End. This is the big boss responsible for the creation of the Forbidden List, and actually, according to Bastion and GX, is banned in the anime as well. Though that of course didn't stop Kaiba from screwing the rules and using it against Siegfried. A chaos monster that is summoned by banishing a light and dark from your grave, has a big 3000 attack body, and you can pay 1000 life points to wipe both players' hands and fields and inflict 300 damage to your opponent for every card sent to the grave this way. Sound pretty busted? Yeah, Konami finally figured that out too, which is why the effect received an errata, allowing Chaos Emperor Dragon to finally come off the ban list jail all the way to being free as a bird. But that errata didn't just make it unbannable, it made it uncompetitive. Given the dragon's infamous history with the game, we think an archetype for it would be very suitable and could involve helping you to resolve the dragon's effect, then cards that help you climb out of the top deck war against your opponent.
Number 4.
XYZ Dragon Cannon. Kaiba uses this card a few times in the series against Yugi, Alistair, and Siegfried. Among the Kaiba cards on this list, this is the one that does formally belong to an archetype, although it's such an old one, having been released in 2003, that it doesn't really stand a chance in today's game. XYZ is the combination of 3 monsters, 2 of which are unions, and the other a vanilla, those being X Head Cannon, Y Dragon Head, and Z Metal Tank. And these 3 can combine in any of 4 combinations, with the best of them being XYZ Dragon Cannon, who lets you pitch a card to destroy a card on the field. While not bad if you can get it out, XYZ as well as the later released VW series are distant seconds to their cousin, the ABC series, which actually has seen some competitive success. Now, Konami has released big bosses that combine XYZ with VW and XYZ with ABC, but this seems more like fan service as opposed to a viable deck. We think it's entirely possible to build out this archetype in a way that not only brings XYZ up to speed, but more smoothly meshes it with the other letters in the series, including ABC and VW, to create a cohesive alphabet deck of union monsters that can combine in a variety of ways for whatever play you need.
Number 3.
Obelisk the Tormentor. Kaiba's guard card is the only one to have seen competitive play in the real-life card game, and a big part of this is owed to the fact that A, he was released first, and B, he maintains some level of protection whereas the other guard cards do not, and that you can't target him with effects. Still, aside from his side deck showings in Frogs or Dragon Rulers, Obelisk has not been able to start in his own deck, and like Slifer, despite receiving a structure deck, doesn't have enough to be competitively viable. The card named after his attack, Fist of Fate, is a bit of a letdown, but cards like Soul Energy Max and certainly the Breaking Ruin Guard are worth building on. We'd like to see Konami do right by this formidable guard card and bring him up to speed with today's game.
Number 2.
La Jin, the Mystical Genie of the Lamp. While not one of his most oft-used cards, only making 3 appearances, we rank La Jin at 2 for 2 reasons. First, in the TCG, he had the distinction of being the most readily accessible beatstick with the highest attack, since other monsters that had similar stats usually came with bad effects, so honoring his past is a good enough reason to get him on the list. But the reason he's high on the list is because why on earth has Konami not released an archetype around genies? Like, they will literally do archetypes around desserts, or frogs. Heck, Frog the Gem kind of sounds like a dessert frog. But a concept staring them right in the face since the beginning of the game has received no love beyond a few anime exclusive cards in Arc 5. We think this deck is just waiting to write itself, a deck where you have various lamps that summon different genies who grant you wishes, i.e. different effects. It's literally right there. Make my wish come true, Konami.
Honorable mention.
The Fang of Crius. Of the 3 legendary dragons, Timaeus, Hermos, and Crius, it is Crius that has the most unique effect that allows Kaiba to fusion summon using traps. This is a pretty unique concept that we think is worth building on. Now, Crius has 4 official monsters available for use in the TCG, those being based on Crush Card, Ring of Destruction, Mirror Force, and Tyrant Wing. But Kaiba has a slew of noteworthy traps that can make this deck work, and expanding beyond Kaiba's cards are a number of notable traps throughout the game's history that would be cool to see in monster form, from Trap Hole Dragon to Solemn Dragon.
Number 1.
But more than genies, and certainly more than machines and dragons, the number 1 concept we'd like to see supported are clowns, and that means taking the top spot on our list is Sagi the Dark Clown. Completely justifiable considering Kaiba is known for running a bunch of powerful monsters, so we fittingly put his weakest monster at the top of the list. But the reason for that is, like La Jin and genies, the clown concept is A, one that hasn't been used for some reason, and B, one that could be really fun. Sagi is a 600 attack dark spellcaster vanilla that is most notably used as a Crush Card virus target, but the clown archetype could involve running a lot of different clowns like a circus working in concert together to create powerful plays the more clowns you control. Trust me, it'd be one heck of a laugh. So that's our list of the top 10 Kaiba cards we'd like to see star in their own deck. Let us know what you think, which cards you'd love to see get their own deck, what you change, or if we missed a card completely that should be on the list. And if you enjoyed this video, you can check out our top 10 Yugi cards and top 10 Joey cards we'd like to see get their own deck in these cards. And be sure to like and subscribe as we reveal our top 10 villain character cards we'd like to see supported coming up next week.